Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
It's that time again. Welcome back to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, Episode 12. Today is August 20th, 2018, and we are, as always, excited to be here. In today's episode, we will be continuing our discussion of The Way of Kings, Book 1, in Brandon Sanderson's epic saga, The Stormlight Archive. Tonight, in Part 2 of our discussion, we will be focusing on Shallan and, of course, Jasnah. For our audience members who are listening to the podcast or watching videos on YouTube, don't forget that we record each episode live at www.twitch.tv/innkeeperstable. We run a live chat during the recording of each episode, so if you want to be a part of the discussion, join us here every other Monday night starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are looking forward to having you here. As always, I am Bill, and I am joined by my cryptic co-hosts, Amy and Jordan.
Hello, hello.
One of these days you will run out. The English language only has so many words.
But there's always more being added to the Oxford English Dictionary, Jordan.
Well, can't trust them.
It's a growing language.
We just borrow words from other languages. That's all good.
That's true.
So how are y'all doing today? Tonight?
Tired and glad a lot of my crazy last 2-week parts are done with most of the way. Because I don't know if everybody knows, and I'm allowed to tell certain details, but not previous Thursday, but Thursday before that, my husband got in a car accident and it totaled the car.
Oh, goodness. And
it was the other person's fault entirely. And so we finally got a truck as of Saturday. Yeah, Saturday.
Ooh, a truck.
Josh has wanted one for a while. So we have a truck.
What kind?
Ford F-150.
Nice. Ooh, those are fun.
It's a pretty truck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to finally have a car because he had to get a ride to work, and he didn't have any broken bones, but he was still pretty banged up, and it was just stress and dealing with things and having to drive to the junkyard a couple times to go do this and tell them, yes, you can release it to my insurance company, take the car away. And yeah, so that was my fun thing. And then I had, all on top of that, Sunday night was the cosplay contest entry deadline. So I had to get Lady Tremaine all the way done, and I managed it.
And it looks amazing.
Crap. Yeah, it's really good. So if you want to see
really does look amazing.
Go to my Instagram. You can see better pictures. Or actually go to my Facebook. Go to my Facebook. I've got more pictures up there. The Instagram, I'm going to slowly start putting more pictures up that way, but I had to put all of the in-progress and final stuff in a photo album on Facebook for the contest. So it's in there. So if you want to see it, go to find Coincidence Cosplay and Props on Facebook, and you can see all the pretty pictures. And so my wig looks a little bit gimpy because I don't have tape I bought tape today, so it'll tape it down to my forehead and look better. But otherwise, awesome. So that's been my last 2 weeks.
Okay then. I feel inadequate.
Why did you let her go before me? Why?
Because now I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, as a single male with no children or cosplays, I've been streaming content, feeling really good about it, and but nothing cool has happened, and I just feel inadequate now. So I'll move on. We will rebuild.
For me, I'm just going to take something that's actually sort of all of us, which is, guys, we've hit over 100 subscribers on YouTube now, which means we have a custom URL. Instead of typing youtube.com/license plate numbers all in a stream, or as Jordan likes to say, something that the diagram would try to decode, we now can be found at www.youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. So make sure to check us out there, and of course share the channel with any friends that you have who are fans of Brandon Sanderson, which honestly aren't we all Brandon Sanderson fans at
Even
heart?
if you aren't, you are eventually.
Exactly. It's inevitable.
You just don't know it yet.
Mm-hmm.
No, in all seriousness, it's really cool that we now have this, just because it's so much easier to tell a friend, hey, you should enjoy this content. Where do I get it? Well,
here's an address.
You gotta search in YouTube and
now
hopefully you'll find it.
Now it's just Cosmere Studies, just like our...
just like all of our other social media
just our Instagram,
stuff.
just like our Patreon, just like our Twitter.
Because we are nothing if not consistent.
We're on brand. We know what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're hip. We're with it.
Well, I've never been hip.
We try.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this week we have moved on from Kaladin. We're going to let the Bridgemen take a little rest this week, and we are going to visit with Miss Shallan Davar.
Shallan.
Now, who is Shallan? What do we know about Shallan?
She is the only daughter, and she's she has 4 brothers. Yes, 4 brothers. So she's the youngest too, right? I think she's the youngest.
Yes.
And her household was never super rich, and they're from Yakaved. And she's got red hair, and she's an artist, and she likes to study naturals. Anyway, animals and plants. And she has a very traumatic past, and she's Jasnah's ward partway through the book.
One thing that was really interesting to me is, because it's made very, very clear that she has fiery red hair, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in interviews and subtly throughout the course of the book, Brandon has mentioned that the typical Alethi look, and the Alethi are supposed to be very closely related to the Vedans, correct? Is that right, or am I remembering something?
I thought the
or is it just they just share a faith?
I think it's the faith.
Okay.
I think the Alethi took over them politically.
Okay,
And so
that makes more
Moranism
sense.
followed.
That makes more sense, because I keep thinking, okay, they have a shared history and a shared heritage, but he's made it very clear that there's sort of a more Asian
Feel to the Alethi.
appearance to the Alethi physically, and red hair isn't something you normally see in that.
No. In Japanese schools, if you have red hair, you will get in trouble, and they'll make you dye it normal.
Really?
In certain schools, they are not like most Japanese schools. You're not allowed to have colored hair, and there are some random few Japanese people who have brown hair, and they have to have a doctor's note saying, "No, this is my natural hair color."
Okay, I thought you were talking about even if you're a foreigner, and I was
no.
Okay,
This is just for the natives. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so that's why a lot of people, when they are on summer break, or which isn't even that long for them, or if they once they get out of high school and before they go into college, that's when they do the crazy outfits and the crazy hair because they finally can.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
This is where I need to just get the more you know sound effect for the podcast.
The rainbow goes across.
Everyone, I'm sure this is going great for the audio-only listeners, but you can imagine it, right? Right?
Absolutely.
You know what it is.
Yeah, they know what we're doing.
Oh, boy. So, Shallan, at the beginning of the book, Shallan is on a mission, right?
Yep.
It's
a secret mission to help save her family. So before we get too into this, there was somebody on Instagram, and I forgot their name, and they have only read Way of Kings, so they wanted us to try and make sure we do spoiler warnings for later things. So you guys know.
And we're going to try and keep everything to Way of Kings, but...
Mm-hmm. So anyway, just figured I should let you guys know, since I didn't know if you'd read that.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that, but I hadn't mentioned it to George.
I 100% didn't.
So that's okay. Anyway, but she is supposed to steal Jasnah's soulcaster, because theirs is broken, and that's how they were going to make their money and not be swallowed by their debt.
So she's kind of setting off, it's one of those situations where just this is a bad idea from the beginning. Because Jasnah Kholin is not the kind of woman you want to mess with. And, you know, I feel like Shallan is sort of aware of this, but she doesn't really figure out, oh, this is what they were talking about until the scene where Jasnah demonstrates this is how soul casting is done.
And it's like, ooh, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, Jasnah's awesome.
Sorry, I swallowed something wrong. Y'all, I'm gonna mute because I have to cough.
So Shallan is on a mission to get the Soulcaster, and she has to become Jasnah's ward, because otherwise there's no way she's going to be able to even get close enough. And I can't remember the number that Jasnah says, but at one point she tells Shallan that like upwards of like 20 women have tried to be her ward, and they've all failed.
Yeah, it was a big number.
Mm-hmm. And Jasnah and Shallan wasn't aware. Like, she knew that she had people appeal, but she didn't realize that they had all been turned away.
Yeah, and there'd been so many.
Yeah, Jasnah's she's a woman of discerning taste.
Well, the thing is, when she showed up, she thought that she had been accepted. She'd just been given permission to talk to Jasnah.
It's like, yeah, you can come and talk to me. Doesn't mean anything.
Well, it makes sense. So this is something, just to get out of the way. My first time reading through this book, the Shallan chapters, I literally despised them. I hated them, and I hated Shallan. And the reason I hated Shallan, for most part of everything, is that they introduced me to Jasnah, and Jasnah, I thought, was the coolest character in the world. And every time we focused on Shallan, in my head, it's like, yeah, but, you know, the cool person's literally across the table. Why aren't we doing more stuff with that person? And I didn't care about Shallan's problems. I didn't care about her plot lines and everything. Having gone forward, and we're not in the spoiler section yet, but knowing what happens forward...
How the story progresses.
Well, in particular, there's a lot of... It's in this book... A lot of the intrigue that's going on in her family is hinted at, but we don't know specifics. Now, having read 2 other books, I know more of the specifics, and so things that were hints that I'm just like, I don't even know what this means. It doesn't matter to me. Now is suddenly, oh, okay, so this is going on and means this. And so the second read, her chapters are insanely improved, in my opinion, by the second read. Minus the fact that minus the part that Kabzil exists, and I hate
There's a lot more depth to it that I caught this time, because I have all the future knowledge of other things and going, oh, there's this connection.
Well,
that one is another thing, and just other stuff that I was like, oh, that's cool, and I just let it go.
You don't understand how dangerous the game her father was playing.
Right.
Until you read the other books, and you're just like, oh.
Until you start learning who the Ghostbloods are.
Yeah. You're like, oh, that's the tattoo your butler had?
Oh!
So who was really running the house? Because I think it was the butler. The butler did it.
Yeah.
That's very possible.
Scary. It's a very scary take on a different kind of Alfred.
Yeah, very, very different. Her chapters improved. So her plan, even though it's a very bad plan, it's also a plan born out of a desperation that I didn't fully grasp the first read through, and I don't think even Shallan and her brothers grasped how bad their situation is, which leads to the very interesting plot thread of her really coming to respect Jasnah and understanding it, and their strange dichotomy where Jasnah accepts her despite herself and despite Shallan's self, because Shallan breaks all these norms and tries to do things that no other ward would ever have tried with Jasnah, because no other ward would ever be as desperate as Shallan is. So Shallan's
coming back in a few years wouldn't be a huge deal to them. It would be a pain, but they could do it.
It's like when Shallan writes that note and she's like, okay, this is either going to cause her to have guards throw me out of the city or accept me as my ward. Like, it's very Cortez.
Mary.
Yeah, it's Cortez burning the ships behind him. It's like, well, you have no other options. Let's do this because all her ships are burned, and it makes for a very incredible read this go around.
Well, and the other thing is, she's risking less than than any other ward would be, because like you said, it wouldn't make much difference to them to come back in a couple of years, but for her, coming back in a couple of years isn't an option.
Yeah.
And so she's just like,
and you almost get the impression that Jasnah almost has no clue how put out Shallan already is by this expedition.
Mm-hmm.
She seems to think, oh no, they're fine. She's a normal royal girl, and it's like,
she can keep paying to keep up.
It's like,
part of that also is just who Jasnah is and what she's trying to accomplish, because she is such a single-minded person that she just says, okay, what this woman is trying to do is completely irrelevant. This is a minuscule problem, and so she just puts it out of her mind.
Mm-hmm.
And she thinks to herself, she might get upset about this, but so what? I don't care about an upset ward. I am trying to save the world.
Yeah.
Or, it's like she says, I've been researching the Voidbringers. I'm trying to make sure the world doesn't get destroyed by an oncoming apocalypse.
Well, and then you can tell how
hurting this little girl's feelings doesn't mean anything. And
you can tell how insignificant she thinks Shallan's concerns are, because she's impressed. Oh, you didn't throw a temper tantrum.
It's like, you kind of took it on the cheek and kept going. You didn't freak out and throw a hissy fit.
Mm-hmm. It's just like, wow, that's her experience with it. It's actually very clever world building, because the only other spot we really get a look into how Royal Society works are the Dalinar chapters, but that's very war focused.
Mm-hmm. Whereas Dalinar doesn't care about a lot of things because he's very busy on doing his thing and talking about the societal norms.
Yeah, and so
we get some from Adolin, but
so this lets us see. Oh, okay, they're typically spoiled. They're very well off, and they don't understand the real stakes of what's going on. Whereas Shallan, who has stakes and has been coddled her entire life, but also cloistered her entire life
and traumatized.
She understands their stakes.
She's seen some stuff.
Yeah,
and she's done some stuff.
And so I thought it was really clever way to showcase some of this was to just have
little subtle things that give you hints for big overarching themes or different messages.
Yeah,
right.
I quite liked it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really like with Jasnah is she is a very, very well-crafted tool for Brandon to use to explain the magic systems, because this is a teacher teaching a ward. This is a scholar, and it's because instead of making it just a wall of text, this is how this magic works, this is how this magic works, he has somebody in universe talking about this is how this magic, and so because she's a scholar, he can actually include these dry passages on certain things because it's been studied, and instead of it being dry to the reader, it gives it sort of an additional flavor, because you think, okay, there are scholars in this world, and just like in our world, they're boring.
So the thing I really liked about it is there are a couple times where she waxes very, very verbose and very dumpy. But all those times typically aren't about world building stuff, it's philosophy stuff. The thing that could only be more boring than the actual world dump. But he does it when they're walking in the alley and Shallan is ready to crap herself like, why are we going to the worst part of town?
This is people keep dying all the time.
Let's not go this way.
And Jasnah is giving a lesson in the middle of this, and it's like, okay, so could we discuss the insanity that's happening? No, can't discuss that? Okay. And
so you keep the adrenaline going even while the dry discourse is happening.
Well, and this is the other thing I found so interesting. I couldn't quite place the terms on it the first time I read it, but after reading it the second time, the reason I like Jasnah. Jasnah doesn't give two wits over what anyone's opinions are. She doesn't care what your opinion is. What she cares is how you arrived at your opinion. That's what's interesting to her. Because she looks at people and she's like, I don't care about your opinion. Everyone has an opinion. Like, there's no value in an opinion. And so there's several times where Shallan's like, no, I disagree with you and these are the reasons why. And she's like, I'm good. I think you're wrong. It's Jasnah. You're wrong, but I like how you approached it.
Like, you have solid reasons for why you think that, even if they're wrong.
Yeah, because in the opposite vein, especially who Jasnah is, she's surrounded by yes men.
Yeah.
Jasnah. Y-E-S. Not, anyway.
Yes.
You're not trying to be clever.
By people who are trying to impress her. And, there's a saying, even a blind pig finds an acorn once in a while.
Blind squirrel.
There are people...
Typically not pigs.
I've heard both.
Pigs would like acorns, right?
Pigs dig for acorns. Anyway, we're really discussing pigs here. Wow. So,
show title.
So the thing is, people are going to Jasnah and they're agreeing with her. That does her no good. If you are surrounded by people who just agree with you, there is no growth. There's no debate. You could be wrong. It's great to have somebody who'll disagree with you, and they could be wrong. But if you respect the methods that they're using, it adds a value.
So she does have plenty of people who are disagreeing with her on the theology.
Yes, and she doesn't care.
Yeah.
Well,
so everybody treats her like a heretic, but a royal heretic. So she's kind of got that buffer, the fact that she's the sister of the king. So
yeah, I found it interesting because you do see that she's very open to discussion and debate up until any point Cabsel shows up. And it's because every time Cabsel shows up, she just swats him away like he's like 3-year-old playing against an NBA player. And she's just like, no, I don't care about your opinion. And it's not because he's religious, because she talks about, no, I've had plenty of great discussions with Ardens. His mind is completely closed. I don't care about his opinion.
But the thing is, it's not necessarily... You're right, it's not because he's religious, but part of it is because he is clearly and has stated that he's trying to convert her.
Yeah.
She doesn't have disdain for the fact that he's religious. She has disdain for the fact that he will not let her be.
Yeah. Well, and then on top of it, I love how he's showing I forget the term for it, where they're doing the thing on the plate.
The sand thing?
Yeah, and they're doing that, and she's like, oh, the sand thing, really?
This is the argument. I've seen this before.
I've heard this one.
And it's like, why aren't you showing me your Theru? Well, that's not a real thing. Huh, okay.
Fancy that.
It's just, I don't know, I love just how nonplussed she was. Just like, okay, buddy, yes, it's all neat and cool. Could you leave now?
And he's always bringing bread and jam, too.
Oh,
yeah, and then the fact okay, I will say this. I hated it the first time. As a method of assassination, it actually was...
awesome.
It was actually kind of clever to... Oh, it's going to be... The bread is going to be your undoing, which is really a good euphemism for my entire diet. Bread will be on my undoing. But it... and jam's the antidote. And it also adds very cool tension to the scene where... So there's so much going on when Shallan is finally poisoned. And it adds some interesting tension at the end where you're like, oh, actually, it was Jasnah who technically poisoned Shallan, because Shallan would have been fine had Jasnah hadn't eaten the jam. And
the jam hadn't been tampered with too.
Yes, but plus Jasnah was the target, so it's
But I also love the other little additional layer. Cabsel also wouldn't have died because he took that huge bit of jam, trying to.
And he choked it down. He's like,
I love the concept of she's not familiar enough with jam, so she can't turn it back. Which is like interesting.
She just, because that is an interesting thing, because women are the feminine diet is supposed to be sweet, versus the males is very spicy, and jam is sweet, and Jasnah doesn't really like jam, which is interesting that she doesn't like sweet food.
But she's a heretic.
Sweet food. Yeah, well, yeah.
So.
But that's Vorinism, not the religion. Well, I guess
right.
Vorinism is
the religion.
Anyway, so. But it's also like it's not just religious; it's also cultural. So I mean, and there's also like one random interlude where there's an Ardent who's a guy, and it's from the girl Ardent's point of view, and she's like, I think he became an Ardent so he can eat sweets, because it doesn't matter if they eat sweets, and he's always making food.
Not the worst strategy, really.
Oh, I know, yeah. It's like
it's a very odd basis for your religion, but okay. Well,
you want to cook and you want to eat sweet things? Okay.
You've got a killer sweet tooth, then hey, that's the way to go.
Make it work.
And boy, Capsule had a real killer sweet tooth. You can't do that. You already said pigs were looking for acorns.
That's a real saying.
No, it's not.
It is a real saying. Yes, they root for acorns.
They also
The line is directly taken from Frasier. Frasier, Jordan.
I don't trust him.
Anyway, so,
let's talk
even a
little
blind
bit more
pig
about
finds
this,
a truffle is the phrase.
Okay, again, both work. And we're spending way more time on this than I think it actually merits.
I'm really concerned about these pigs.
Wow.
Oh, I've needed to laugh.
So.
Okay. Anyway. Should we talk about her family more, or do we want to talk about...
I want to talk a little bit more about this poisoning plot, because I think it's an interesting concept and an idea. I do have one concern about it.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you are constantly ingesting poison and the antidote, that has got to wreck your insides.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it doesn't kill you, it's doing something in there, and there are chemical reactions going on all over the place.
He's giving himself cancer. He just doesn't know it.
Clearly.
I can't prove you're wrong. But no, yeah, you're right. It probably can't be. But at the same time, I mean, what could go wrong with ingesting something called backbreaker poison?
Indeed.
I don't know.
But it was one thing that did stand out to me. I'm just like, that's not quite how poison and antidotes work. But, okay.
But it works well for the plot.
Wizard did it. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, there is magic. You're all good. It's all good.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's go into her family.
So she has... See, I've actually looked up the names because I was like, I can never keep the names straight. But there's
brothers.
4 brothers. And there's Halarin, and he's already passed away. And there's Jushu, and he's the gambler. And there's Balat, would you call that a sadist? Or what do you call that?
I think...
sadists do, that's like you do pain, but I think it's actually antisocial.
Disorder.
I can't remember the specifics.
Because he just likes torturing things and cutting off their legs. And
it
stuff.
tends to be a precursor. Hurting animals tends to be a precursor to hurting other people.
Yeah.
That said,
and...
when we do get a viewpoint chapter from him, it's kind of clear that he does it as a stress reliever.
Yeah.
But
you can tell that it's building, like he says.
Dark.
Yeah, and he mentions that certain things aren't as relieving as they once were, so he's gonna have to keep ramping it up.
Yeah. But I'll be honest, the thing that more freaked me out in that chapter was the description of what an axe hound looked like. That was far more disturbing.
Well, again, the pictures of the axe hounds are just... Yeah.
I could get used to it, but it would be really creepy. I would not want to cuddle. That just...
It's just, you can't call it a hound. That really bugs me on a level that doesn't make sense. But we've already discussed me and the pig thing, so...
Yeah, and then there's his other... So is Wickham, is he sickly? I believe
he is. Although we may not... I think we find that out in the next book. It's not a super...
No, because he showed up with, like a cane or something.
Okay.
And it mentions, that he doesn't want to come out, or he can't, or something, I thought.
Right.
Yeah, there was something going on with that.
Yeah, because I looked up a little picture, somebody had drawn one, and so I was like, oh, that, and I was like, wait, what's up with him? Because Wickham didn't play a big part in this one. I was like, I don't remember what's kind of going on with him.
Yeah. Essentially, what we find out, though, is that this family, they have issues.
Oh.
Every single person has their own big issues.
And the only one who seemed to have it together is the one who left.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all...
Which gave Shallan some issues.
Yeah. But it's one of those things. Everything makes perfect sense, given how controlling their father was and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just how unfortunate everything is.
And then, of course, when we find out, like, all about the butler and the father's involvement with whatever group this is that wants the Soulcaster back, it goes even deeper. It's not just he's a controlling father. There's something deeply wrong.
There's some super dark, scary stuff going on.
Yeah. And then, of course, we find out Shallan's major trauma that she as her truth that she gives at the end of the book. What was that for? Was that to...
That was to do...
to Soulcast?
Soulcast. Yeah, she had to give truth to the little...
To the Spren.
Yeah, I was like, are you saying is this for him?
Which soulcasting was it?
No, it wasn't soulcasting. It was
proving it's something to Jasnah, I think.
It was to go to...
Oh, to step into Shadesmar.
That's right, yeah.
And then he said a powerful truth indeed,
and she goes and Jasnah's like, you idiot, get out of there. You're gonna get yourself killed.
Right.
That entire scene I loved. I loved that scene because I love that Shallan finally puts it all together. Because and we'll probably talk about Jasnah going full vigilante in a bit, but when she does that, she's like, I don't think that's how soulcasting is supposed to work. I don't soulcast. How would I know? Like, because the final two, she doesn't touch. She sends out lightning bolts that turns them into like fire and smoke.
You're talking about it.
And smoke.
You're talking about the earlier scene with the...
Yeah, and so she has clues that Jasnah isn't doing things the way she should, and then she's like, how has she not noticed the switch? Because
it's been weeks since she hasn't noticed.
Well, and she went to all this trouble to point out that Jasnah casually soulcast stuff just for the heck of it. Like the fact where she's just like, oh, this paper isn't going to burn itself, okay. Just turns it into fire.
Remind me of something. I can't remember. Do we see the King's Soulcasters in this book, or is that the later one?
That's later.
Yeah.
Okay, that's in the next book. Okay.
Yeah, this is the only Soulcaster we see is
This is the one that Jasnah has. Okay.
Yeah, and so she's certain that she should have...
Like, some screw with that. That is not how it's supposed to work.
And just at the end where she finally figures out, wait a minute, and she starts putting together everything that, no, she just can somehow do this by herself. Mm-hmm. And despite all her betrayal, she's able to get back into Jasnah's good graces. And it's a very... I thought it was very interesting for two reasons. One, Jasnah mentions really nothing about how am I going to save my family at this moment. At that moment, she's like, no, Jasnah is right. What she's doing is more important than everything else. Mm-hmm. And she sort of just said, I'll have to figure that out when I get there. The other reason it's interesting is Jasnah has never had a peer in her life. Jasnah's always been the smartest. By all descriptions, she's the most beautiful woman in whatever room she walks into. She's the most well-read. She has the best fashion sense. She just walks around Little Miss Perfect. She's a freaking princess. Yeah. And this is the first time in her life she finally has a peer. Is she dumber? Yes. Is she not as well-versed? Yes.
She's not necessarily dumber. She's just much
naive.
Yeah,
much less experienced.
Yeah, but she figured it out, and she shows that she's willing to try things. And for Jasnah, who's been keeping all these secrets, for the first person to finally figure out her big secret, and strangely prove that she can keep a secret as well because of how long she kept her secret from Jasnah. It's a weird thing to suddenly prove, yes, I am useful to you because I conned you. What?
Such a good con that I.
The other thing though is, like, when you're working on a huge project, like one that has a lot of impact, and you're doing it on your own, it can get incredibly overwhelming. You keep doing it because it needs to get done. But then if suddenly somebody shows up and says, all right, I'm here to help.
And I'm partway up to
I'm up to the task.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most relieving feelings, and you can just imagine that Jasnah was just this weight came off her shoulders.
Oh yeah.
Because suddenly she can talk to somebody about this. She can bounce ideas off of people.
Someone, yeah.
I mean, I've talked about my board game cafe that I'm working on and developing. The most helpful things to me are when I can talk to people and they give me feedback that, it's not just, oh yeah, that sounds good. It's genuine feedback. When they shoot down ideas even, it's comforting because you're talking to somebody who knows it well enough that they can offer that kind of feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, constructive criticism is helpful, but it's hard to give good constructive criticism. And you have to have the right attitude about it. Yeah, I remember reading the comments from the contest from last year when I didn't place it or anything at FanX, and it was hard at first to read the comments and go, oh well, they didn't like this and the other thing, and then go, you know what? I came back to later and said, all right, those are things I need to improve on, and I could look at it better that way.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we talked about her brothers, and there's also. Balat has a fiance because they're not married yet, right? Or
right.
Yes, because she's the one who writes their communication.
Because men don't write; they don't write or read. That's right.
Actually, let's talk about that. The whole concept of feminine arts.
Mm-hmm.
So, on Roshar, particularly in Voran culture, there are certain things that men are allowed to do and certain things that women are allowed to do.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of the safe hand just absolutely.
That would drive me crazy. Oh my goodness, not being able to use my left hand for anything.
Well,
it makes me think of like almost Arabic culture, how like that hand is considered dirty.
Well, and the fact that it's not just covering it up with a glove for most people. It's like you wrap.
You've got like buttons on the inside, so you've
basically got a nub that you can bump things with, but you can't grasp. Except for, I think Jasnah has a glove, correct?
Sometimes
she still covers her hand, but she doesn't wear the long sleeve over it, correct?
And like the Shallan woman, the captain's wife, she wears a glove too.
Yeah.
Like anyone who has to deal and actually has to do things, they wear gloves. And in later books, you see other people wear gloves compared to wearing the full safe hand sleeve.
Now, in an interview, actually, somebody talked to Brandon. They asked him if he'd really. This was after the first book was out. They asked if he had explained anywhere, or if they just missed it, the significance of the safe hand. Mm-hmm. And Brandon sort of explained a little bit. He said that in universe, there's actually a book, not the safe hand, but the masculine versus feminine arts.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think I heard this.
There was a scholar who said that masculine arts are things that need to be done with two hands, and the feminine arts are things that can be done with one hand.
That's true.
So, for example, writing can be done with one hand, so it's not for men to do; it's for women to do. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. And the way he said it was, it's like a cultural outgrowth where one thing is said, and then it sort of people take it to an extreme, and then that becomes the norm, and then they take it to an extreme. And it almost becomes sort of a Pharisaical thing where it's just you have to do it exactly this way.
Or else you're in trouble, even though the original rules were way back.
So it's basically something starts out as an interesting concept and then it becomes the absolute necessity. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was fascinating that he put something like that into the universe. He also compared it to foot binding.
Yeah.
Where in some cultures they actually bound their feet and but this is a little bit less extreme.
Yeah. Because you still have your hand and it still functions, you just don't use it.
And then, of course, the safe pouch, I think, is a nice little innovation.
It's like you don't go there. You don't get to touch it. It's not considered something that you can look at it or anything.
I have 4 sisters. You never look in the purse. Do not look in the purse.
No, it's really funny. Like, there have been times that, like, I'm with another lady and I'm like, oh, get that out of my purse. And it's like, for us, it's like, I wouldn't let any woman look in my purse. But if it's someone that I'm fairly comfortable with, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's just in that part of my purse. And we can get it out. But, like, and my husband, I can, like, he can get stuff in my purse, but he usually has a hard time finding things. He just doesn't know how I arrange it or whatever. But I wouldn't ask you to look in my purse, really. So
and I'd feel a little weird if you did.
Yeah. So, anyway. So there are sort of equivalents in our culture as well, just probably not quite as extreme.
Right. It's interesting. I love that he actually put this in. It makes the world so much richer. Mm-hmm. You know, just these little things. When
you take one detail and you figure out how it would affect everything else, just like the same concept of making sure you know how the sewer system works and all the other stuff that we talked about episodes ago.
And again, Brandon has said, by focusing on certain details, it makes it so the audience is willing to assume you know what you're talking about in other areas.
Mm-hmm. Because obviously, if you figured out this part, then you have all the things figured out.
Exactly.
Clearly.
Yep.
We know exactly what we're doing.
Of course. Oh, so the other fun thing that Sanderson seems to like snarky characters and other things like that and being witty. And Shallan seems to be his witty character in this one, but she is not as experienced at doing it. And so it's interesting how when she ends up having a conversation with Jasnah about it, how she, growing up, would like learn how to be quicker with her retorts so she could get them out faster before her nursemaids would get after her and put her in timeout, put her in the equivalent of timeout again. But Jasnah's like, you're not taking the time to consider it and make sure it has a bigger impact and is a much more thought out and eloquent, witty line or whatever, or quip, that's the right word. And so you can see Shallan starting to improve on that as she goes, and that she learns to restrain herself and go, no, I shouldn't say the first thing that comes to mind. I should figure out the better one, or if it's even going to help my situation, or if it's just going to be shooting myself in the foot.
Right.
Well, and I love that Jasnah doesn't say, no, you can't do, smart alecky comments.
Yeah.
That's the problem. No, it's not a problem. It's that it needs to be useful. And she knows that in this society, let's face it, we see that sometimes the women in these courts can get a little catty with one another.
Oh yeah.
And it's a currency to be witty and have good lines. Definitely helps you.
The interesting thing is when I was probably about 12 or 13, I wanted people to notice me and think I was clever, and so I would often just spit out whatever funny thing came to my head. And my cousin said something to me, and at the time it was kind of cutting, but looking back, it actually has sort of been helpful. He said to me, you don't have to say everything that comes into your head. And it was one of those, like, I was kind of hurt at the time, but looking back, I've sort of tried to hold back on some things, and just that way you don't say everything, because
you have to have the right amount and like the right.
So
if you spit out everything, that you loses the effect.
So here's a metaphor that I've got. The difference between a good photographer and a bad photographer is a bad photographer takes 1 million pictures and just shares them all. A good photographer takes 1 million pictures and knows which ones to delete. And that it's sort of the same concept of, you have the ideas, you know which ones are good, you put them in the right place, and they have an impact. If you're just spewing everything out, it doesn't have an impact because, he said something again. He said something again. Jordan and I had a friend growing up a friend in college who he didn't talk often. But every so often, he would just say something out of the blue, and it was like he didn't. First off, it was novel just to hear him speak, But then he would say something, and it'd always be one of the most hilarious things, just coming out of nowhere, and it was effective because we would always crack up laughing because he said something and it mattered, and so. And Jordan knows exactly.
Oh yes, the Nick bombs. But it's very true, and it's interesting. It's just because Jasnah has everything. She's so utilitarian about everything that's going on in the world, and in her ward, she's trying to do the same thing. And I like. It's a very interesting growth of their relationship. When she first meets Shallan, she's impressed at her tenacity. And then it's like, okay, let's see what you can do. Right now, like, as we're walking to go help people who are trapped.
Let's go save the, yeah.
And she's like, yeah, now's great.
Let's do it.
And because now's the time I'm giving you, so you better take it. It's just like,
exactly.
Oh, okay. Well, this. And she just, okay, and then aren't you going to ask me if the arts? No, the arts are useless, so what else you got for me?
And Shallan's like, but that was my strong point.
Yeah. And so... So Shallan then shows her, look, I didn't have the best tutors growing up, and my dad's a big reason for it. I can draw, and you're wrong. It's very useful. And while Jasnah never outright says the drawing is useful, she then says, I need you to look... in Dalinar chapter, where she's communicating via span read, she's like, I want you to look at something. And Dalinar's like, this is amazing. This isn't Jasnah.
Like, she didn't draw that. I know her drawing.
And it shows that, without having to say a thing, shows that Jasnah has figured out, you know what, there's a use for this that I was not considering.
Well, the scene where Jasnah comes in and first sees the drawing, and suddenly she's like, this isn't just a doodle. This is actually, there is something deeper in these images. There's something special here.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that Shallan weirds people out by, she like blinks and takes the memory, and then she can draw it like perfectly, and people are like, don't I have to like pose for you and sit still? And she's like, no, you're good. And it's just it's just weird. It's very strange.
The scene where she draws Taravangian, it's just so cool, because suddenly you see, yes, that she doesn't say anything, but she's just like, huh. She takes note. And the fact that she takes note speaks volumes.
Oh, yeah.
Because she is she has no use for useless people.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, she has no patience for useless people.
Yeah, so the other thing that I was thinking of, Jordan, when you were talking about the conversation that they had, is that when Shallan's saying, I didn't have the best tutor, she's like, but that means that everything that I have learned, I have done myself. So that means that there is that much more effort and that much more tenacity and that much more persistence in every little drop of knowledge that she has. And that speaks volumes for people who get fed information or great schooling by, off the silver spoon in our society, compared to people who have scrambled their way up from the bottom. So.
And that's something that she does treasure. She doesn't care for unearned wisdom.
Yeah.
And she realizes, this girl actually isn't the silly girl I think she is. She actually has a lot going on.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that Shallan recognized that would be of value to Jasnah and pointed it out also impressed Jasnah.
Mm-hmm. And then on top of it, the other thing is the fact that, and this is, I think, the dichotomy of all of the Shallan chapters, is the fact that even though she's trying to con this woman, anytime she's talking to her and doing these things, she's coming from a very sincere, a strangely sincere place for someone who's trying to con someone.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's interesting about her chapters, is this juxtaposition between Shallan is finding out for the first time, because she's been so sheltered and treated like a porcelain doll her entire life, that suddenly she's given a chance to move and do stuff, and she's finding out exactly who she wants to be at the most inconvenient time ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that she's gets at least from, I think it's from her brother's point of view, and as well as like when she's communicating over span read, and they're like, "Are you okay?" I mean, they're so concerned about the fact that she's sent out all by herself, and like the first scene you see with Shallan, she's like, "This is great being out by myself.
This is where I want to be,"
and she's having the time of her life. And it's just kind of interesting seeing that dichotomy of she's been so cloistered, but then as soon as she's able to get out, she's flourishes with it. And I can see me having that problem with my kids where I'm going to be like, oh, I have to like protect them and stuff, but then I have to let them go out and be people. And I'm starting to get that because my daughter's starting first grade in a couple days, and that's going to be really weird with her in school all day. And part of me's like, yes, yeah, I'm one of those parents who's like, go, I need. And my son's gonna be in preschool 2 days a week for like 2 hours. So I'm like, hey, I get 2 hours. Nobody, but me. So, but it's just interesting to see that even with her brothers, because she is the youngest and she is the girl, and she has been treated like a porcelain doll, like you guys were saying. And so it's, yeah, and I mean, even just with the society, they treat their women like they're breakable and fragile, and they can't handle things, especially with the Vorin and the Alethi and stuff, versus it seems like other cultures are less overly protective.
It's a strange thing too, because they actually, like, if you go towards, this is obviously sort of a more feudal society, they're allowed to actually do a lot more than feudal women. Yeah. Like, they're the engineers, they're the city planners, they're they're hugely involved in politics. And it's weird it's because of how they view what is masculine and what is feminine. They're like, okay, women are these delicate things because they don't go to war. And it's like, well...
Except the ones who go and write down what happens in the war.
Yeah, and the ones who can turn you into smoke, and...
Yeah, that's freaky.
Yeah, it's one of these things you're just like, I think you forget that the men tend to forget that there's a lot of strength that's not in a sword.
Yeah.
While at the same time, the women tend to treat the men like they're all idiots.
Because they can't read and write, and they don't engineer, and they don't...
Yeah, whereas...
We have to handle that as the women, It's kind of a feeling you sort of get off of.
Yeah, even though it's like, for as much as we hate him, a man like Sadeas, it's like, no, the guy's pretty cunning. You better not underestimate him. Well, and I think a little bit Shallan tends to take this for granted, because she doesn't see a lot of the conniving nature of a lot of people. And I notice men a lot of the time is who she's underestimating.
Well, yeah, when she's talking to Yab and he's like taking her up.
I love Yab.
The Palladium. I can't remember what it's
Palladium?
called now. Yes.
Palanaeum.
Palanaeum. I was like, there's too many words that start with that. Anyway, when he's taking her up there and he's like, oh, well, the guy's going to try and con you and you're going to go up. And she's like, no, it's the scenic route. And then when he's, gambling and like beating them and like, and ripping off the guys. So he's waiting for her outside and stuff. And she's like, is that really wise? And he makes some deeper comments here and there. And she's like, oh, you did think about that more, and yet he comes off so kind of country bumpkin sailor type,
Or the scene where she's at the bookseller.
Yes.
And he comes in.
He totally does an awesome job.
Oh, that was amazing. I loved that scene.
Where he plays it up and gets her the good deal on that.
It does a good job of showing that she's intelligent, but she's naive.
I mean, anyhow, you just have to look back at her background and go, she's been incredibly cloistered.
But it shows there's more than one type of intelligence as well, because Yalb is very street smart.
Oh, yes.
He's able to completely manipulate this bookseller because he knows exactly how it works. He knows the bookseller's going to try and rip her off, and he's just like, I'm not having it, so...
Yeah, and I mean, you have to think about how many markets he's probably been in. This is his realm where he knows how to function really well and can just go for it.
And the thing is, he knows nothing about book prices, but he knows about
that
merchants.
This guy's going to rip her off, and this is, supply and demand.
And so... No, I love her interactions with the sailors on the Wind's Favor.
Yes.
What's called the Wind's Favor?
Something like that, at least, yeah.
I think it's the Wind's Favor, Wind's Fortune. I think it's the Wind's Favor. Anyway, and Captain Toesbuck, but
he's a fun character.
Mm-hmm. And how much they enjoy her, and I think that's one of the reasons that she starts blossoming, is she goes out on her own, and these sailors, these rough and tumble guys, they see her, and while they become very protective of her.
But they still let her do things.
They're also very impressed with her. They're enamored with her almost.
Mm-hmm. Like she does they watch her draw, and I think she does portraits for a couple of them.
Uh-huh.
And
that's one of them.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to see, that like they almost see her as kind of, I don't even know the right word. I had a thought.
They adopt her.
They take her in that way.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't see them making her do like heavy work, but they don't say, "Oh, you shouldn't be in the sun. You shouldn't be in the way here. You can't see this. You can't do this other thing."
Because they're not from a society where that's how women work.
They're very open to, oh yeah, you can totally look at this thing or watch us do this, or if you want to. I'm sure if she asked, "Can you show me how to do that knot?" they would have showed her how to do the knot.
Well, I do think we need their society does still have the gender division.
Yes. They are a Voran society, but it's not as strict.
Yeah, but
because it's a more practical society, because it has to be.
Yeah, they
don't have servants to handle certain things, and so they have to step up to do it.
Yeah, oh goodness, in one of the interludes, there's the girl with the grass, and I think she's Thalen too, and so she's an apprentice to
Rissa.
Yeah, Rissa. And so, I mean, she gets to do things that they probably wouldn't let a light-eyed Voran woman or a Alethi woman do. So they are more open than the Alethi in that way.
Yeah, the other thing I thought that was interesting about that is we find out that she's pretty convinced that the actual captain of the ship can read, but that he's faking.
He won't let on because it's not considered a good thing,
But again, it's a practicality thing. He's like, knowing how to read is an advantage for me. And it's one of those, they tell me not to do it, I don't understand the reasoning, and so I'm going to do it anyway. I won't brag about it or talk about it, because then I won't advertise, and two, I get in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because like even Shallan, who's learning a lot, and she doesn't care as much for a lot of the things. Even she's like, a man reading, that's kind of weird. She's not comfortable with it.
And I hate to say it, it's kind of weird. I still think it's weird every once in a while when I see a guy sewing, and I'm like, they can do that? And then I'm like, wait, of course they can do that. I'm sure. There's the word tailor. That means they sew, and it's just weird cultural things that, like, because my dad doesn't really sew. I think he could probably do a button and stuff like that. My husband doesn't sew very much. Like he had me show him how to do a little bit for something and stuff, but the guys that I knew growing up didn't really know how to sew. So seeing men sew or knowing that they can is always a little bit jarring for me at first. Then I'm like, oh, it's fine. Obviously they can do it. I don't know why it's a weird thing for me, but it's a small equivalent for Voran society.
Yeah, I love it. It's a unique idea that I've never seen done, and it
introduces interesting things later on too.
The thing that's interesting is I've actually seen people complain about these books because of the major gender divide.
Yeah,
and I feel like they're misinterpreting it because they see it as, oh, this is promoting gender division and, major, misogyny and stuff. And it's just...
And women can't fight and do all those other things.
But the thing is, it's part of a culture. Brandon's not saying this is right, this is wrong. It's just... But cultures exist. There are different cultures. And if you write a book where everything is exactly how you think the world should be,
there's no growth.
So what? Who cares about the book? There's nothing interesting. Suddenly there's no conflict. There's no sort of discord. And the fact that he creates these cultures makes them three-dimensional because people are different. People are imperfect. And
this
so
way
you can't
can...
just...
Well,
Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
no. But I think it's also because it's interesting how, well, they have a point, but you see as one of the big themes, especially going forward, you see a lot of people rejecting the role given to them for society. Kaladin rejects being just, this lowly dark eyes. Shallan rejects being this little defenseless thing.
I am excited to talk about Navani next time. Because Navani is freaking amazing.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Yeah, the scene with her and Dalinar. I have, it's seared into my memory, and I can remember exactly what cosplay part I was working on at the time as I was listening to it, and I paused to listen to it, and I was like, oh, that's a big scene. Anyway.
Oh, Navani is just, she is one of my favorite.
Yeah, I like her a lot more the second time around. Not that I didn't like her, but she just seems to have more of an impact the second time around.
Part of it, I think, is because we don't get a viewpoint from her until pretty near the end of this book.
Very much so.
And Dalinar doesn't fully trust her. Right?
Yeah.
And
he definitely doesn't understand her.
And so because of that,
he doesn't know what to do.
Because of that, the only exposure to her we have is through his lens. Mm-hmm. And so we're a little uneasy around her because he's always uneasy around her. And then we get a viewpoint from her, and suddenly it just clicks into place. And you're like, okay, you're amazing. You're wonderful. You're exactly what... And it just makes more sense. And so, but we'll talk about her when we get to Dalinar's episode.
Yeah.
So.
God.
We probably want to start... we probably want to head over and take a look at some emails. Or do y'all have other things about this book that you want to...
I think a lot of my other Shallan stuff is going to end up having to be the other books because it's...
Spoilerific.
Spoiler stuff that I'm trying to not do, and it's really hard not to.
All right. Well, we actually have we have an email to discuss this week. But before we do, as always, we want to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to keep creating new episodes. The show continues to be free for everybody, and it will keep being free. But if you want to support us, even with just $1 or $2 each episode, you can go to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. If you become a patron, you'll get immediate access to our Discord channel, where we've got a budding community growing. And on Discord, that's a great place to have discussions with other fans of the books. And you can also interact with us, tell us what you think of the show, give us some input. We've gotten some great input from patrons in the past, and we would love to get more. So if you want to chime in there, we would love to have you show up. You also get early access to different content, including bonus episodes. We produce as well as automatic entry into any giveaways and extra entries into giveaways. We'll have people, for example, on our last giveaway, we had it on Instagram. People were able to enter there, but
they want a patch.
And they want a patch. Patrons would be able to enter that way, but they would also get an additional free entry from the beginning. So, Patreon really helps us out because this is just the three of us. We don't have any huge backing behind it. This is a pet project that we're trying to grow, and so. We each have our own lives, our own jobs, and things that we're doing outside. And so, but we would love to grow the show. We would love to make episodes more regularly. So if you like what you've heard, head on over to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. Again, even $1 or $2 per episode is a huge help. And working with you, we can make this show bigger, better, higher quality, with better audio equipment, and just come out more regularly and improve the show overall. So moving on to emails. This week, we actually had somebody reach out to us on Facebook. Amy, do you want to
read
the email for us? Sure.
Okay, this is from Peter M. It says, could you theoretically use investiture from one system to produce the effects of another?
Pause real quick. This is spoiler territory.
Yes.
This is spoiler territory. So
For different Cosmere books and everything else.
So, if you're worried about spoilers, now is the time to tune away. We love you. Come back next episode, and
see you later.
We'll see you then.
So, continuing. So, using investiture from one system to produce the effects of another. Say, use breaths to light weave or soul cast. Or stormlight to awaken, or tap for ferrochemical charges as if from a necrocell mind.
Necrocell
Necrocell mind. And can you collect breaths on Roshar or Scadrial?
Okay, Jordan, do you remember what necrocell stores ferrochemically?
It stores investiture.
It stores just straight up investiture.
Where is that from? I have not heard.
That's from
the Ars Arcanum.
Ars Arcanum in the final of the first trilogy, and they don't really know.
Right.
But they don't really go into details of it. We still have some question because
I remember when it first came out, Jordan and I were like, "What the heck is investiture?"
Because we hadn't seen the term.
He hadn't used the term. Yeah.
And so it's the ability. It's your actual ability to do stuff, and we're gonna have to get into it. It's complicated, but it's definitely involved in the medallions that are used in the second Mistborn stuff.
Right.
But more importantly,
to
answer this guy's question, yes, you can definitely use other things to power other things. It depends upon what's being done. Brandon has confirmed that. I think he also asked, like, could you technically steal with hemalurgy someone else's abilities?
To surge bind.
And I don't have it in front of me, but there is a Brandon word of Brandon where he's saying, like, yeah, if you have an adium spike can steal any ability if you do it in the correct spot. And
in fact, it can even be used to steal a nail bond between a Spren and another person.
Yeah. That said, I don't know how that would work, and that sounds horrifying. But hemalurgy, it's fun for everyone. No, but so you can do it, and we know that you can use, at the very minimum, breaths and stormlight seem to be interchangeable.
I don't know if they're interchangeable. They're
as a power source.
They're compatible.
Yeah, they seem like to me, from what I read and how I read it, it seems to me it's like, okay, well, one's just used like an energizer, and this one's a Duracell. You can sort of plug them in to do similar effects, and the actual.
I don't think people on other worlds have breaths.
And we'll talk about that in a second.
And so, yeah, the question is, can you
use investiture from one system to another?
Yeah,
so
you can.
Yeah, so we know Brandon has given us at least one specific example. Mm-hmm. Again, this is spoiler territory, but Zale, who we meet in the second Stormlight book, is actually Vasher from Warbreaker. And at the end of...
I did not realize at all.
At the end of Warbreaker, we learn that Vasher is a returned. Mm-hmm. And which means that every week he has to consume a breath to survive.
Or consume one that he had stored before.
Right. One of the reasons that the main reason, actually, Brandon said, that he is on Roshar is because investiture is much more readily available. He can draw in Stormlight as a breath and consume that to survive.
Cheaper.
Mm-hmm,
way cheaper.
And so, but asking about can you collect breaths on Roshar or Scadrial, there's two answers to that question. So people from Roshar and Scadrial do not have what is referred to as breaths. That is native to Nalthis.
Nalthis, yeah, that seems.
But I believe that you could collect the breath of a Nalthian on Scadrial or Roshar.
That makes sense.
I can't say that for certain, but I suspect that's the case.
Yeah, it follows the logic there.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if you could take it and you could actually infuse
That
a
into-
sphere with a
that?
breath.
Huh.
It's a question.
But would
Yeah.
that be? It might be a loss of. It may not be a net loss.
There might be
of-
some entropy.
Yeah. That
Well,
you may not
I'm just going to say, as someone who's got a physics degree, there's definitely entropy. I will never surrender that, not even to Brandon. But
Not even to Brandon?
not even to Brandon. Entropy always
You have
goes
to give
up.
him air. You have to give him air and Shadesmar, though.
Yes, that's true. But it's very interesting, the concept of these magic systems interacting, just from the simple fact that if they interact, we've already seen what happens when you let magic systems interact in Mistborn. Some pretty incredible things can occur. And so
And in later books, you see Awakening in Roshar.
Yeah. And so combining magical effects to do even more things is going to get very complicated, very fast.
Oh, yes.
And the reason it's more interesting on Roshar is on every other world, the magic system is incredibly, as far as the actual power source of the magic system, is incredibly limited. For Rukami, you have to be weak for a time in order to get the strength. I don't see a way to really get to get allomancy to work with well with others, just because it's tied to the specific metal. Breaths,
The biology of the person too.
breaths, while incredibly
And that's your point.
yeah. That goes into the breaking of rules, but you start, and then breaths, while incredibly prevalent, the person has to be willing to part with it in order to get them. Whereas Stormlight comes pretty regularly, refills spheres. It's solar energy. It's always available. And so suddenly, if you can interact with Stormlight, well, we've got cheap free energy.
The weeping must be terrible for Vasher, though.
It's solar energy with a kick.
Yeah.
Oh, it's one heck of a kick.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
So
basically,
probably.
so yeah, that's to a degree, and it depends on the specific magic systems you're working with. But investiture itself is the common currency of these magic systems. It's the magic juice of Brandon's
It's the mana.
world. Exactly, it's the mana. Now, for our other listeners, if you have any questions or feedback for us, we would love to hear you. Let us know what you think of the show and what your favorite moments from the Cosmere have been. And, of course, ask us any questions that you'd like us to discuss. What topics have you been dying to know more about? What theories do you have? I would love to hear somebody just spit out a theory that I haven't thought of before, because that's the main reason I'm here. Is I like talking about what else could happen. Why is this important? Why is this important? What if you combine the two? So if you have any theories or questions, feel free to email us at cosmerestudies@gmail.com, or you can contact us on social media or in the comments section of our videos on YouTube, and we will talk about it on an episode. Now, before we move forward, or before we start finally wrapping things up, each of us has our own personal projects. Jordan, where can we find you outside of the Sandersonian Institute?
Best spot is twitch.tv/splicestream. I am doing my normal Amiibo tournament stuff and actually ramping it up because the end of our big tournament's playoffs are going to be happening Saturday morning. Right. So just show up then. My team is one of the final four in, kind of shocking. But it's good. Come root for me because everyone else is the bad guy.
It's an inside job.
It is. It's amazing.
All right, Amy, how about you?
I am on most of the social media platforms. I'm on Twitter as CoincidenceCosp, and I'm on Instagram at coincidence_display, and I am on Facebook at Coincidence Cosplay and Props. And my dog, Rosie, is on Cosmere_puppy on Instagram. And I just finished my Lady Tremaine, which is the Wicked Stepmother from Cinderella.
It looks amazing.
It really does.
It's so crazy. And I'm hoping I have an event that I'm going to try and go to. I think it's called Petapalooza, anyway. I think I'm going to try and go to on Saturday. And I'm hopefully going to do her, and I have wig tape, so the wig will be even better. And I can try and do her in her full glory, and see how it goes. And I'll try and get pictures taken. So that's that. And I have my Starler blasters to finish weathering, and otherwise I am set for Fanix, which is such a relief because that was a lot of stress to get the dress done and everything.
The thing I love is that Lady Tremaine is not a character that you think of as being cosplayed often. So no, I love that you went with her.
Like, there was only like one tutorial I found for the wig.
Oh,
like
gosh.
One. Whereas like a lot of other stuff was like, oh, you can, here's like a whole bunch of them, whereas like the Lady Tremaines you usually find are the ones at Disneyland and Disney World. Looking.
And
those
in
poor
all
women
honesty,
have to wear all the same dress. It's terrible.
In all honesty, though, Lady Tremaine is one of the scariest Disney villains.
Oh, she's freaky. Oh my goodness, she's so abusive and terrible. And
Plus, she's got Maleficent's voice, and so
yeah,
I didn't realize it was the same one.
Like, I think I've side by side pictures, and their faces are pretty similar.
Oh yes.
Because
now
it
you
seems
point
like
it
a lot
out.
of times they'll have a face similar to the voice actor or actress.
Mm-hmm. All right, and as for myself, when I am not streaming or podcasting about Brandon Sanderson, I am writing board game reviews over at the Innkeeper's Table at www.innkeeperstable.com. I am currently working on a review of a game from Red Raven Games called Artifacts Inc., so hopefully I'll get that out soon. For some reason, this is one that I sit down to write the review and my mind blanks. It's a good game, but... so keep an eye out for my full review, though, in hopefully soon. And, of course, you can follow me for announcements on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Innkeeper's Table. If you've enjoyed the show, again, we would love it if you would give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Aside from becoming a patron, it's the best way to support us. Rating the show will help us to get more followers because people can find us more easily on iTunes. And also, of course, make sure to share the podcast with your friends and family who love Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, and again, big thanks for helping us get over 100 on
yes, that's awesome.
On YouTube. That's you guys.
We couldn't do that without y'all. And it's just, it's one of those things when we first sat down to make this podcast, we were thinking, okay, this is fun. We'll our family and friends can check out and see what we're doing. But
it'll be fun.
We don't have that many friends. And so it's just good to know that y'all are watching us, and we appreciate that you watch. We love having you, so thank you.
Yep. Arigato.
In addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, our listeners can also find our videos on YouTube at www.youtube.com/Cosmere Studies, or audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us and contact us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile at Cosmere Studies. That's all we've got for this week's episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, but we'll be back for more Stormlight talk in 2 weeks. So in the meantime, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember, there's always another secret.